Love-hate running backs here, and we will start with Josh Jacobs against the Bears. Obviously, for the Raiders offense right now, this is a pretty good-looking matchup for last year's NFL leading rusher.
It's an amazing matchup against the Bears. Chicago allows the 5th most fantasy points per game to running backs. They've allowed the most receiving yards to running backs. Jacobs leads all running backs with an 18% target share this season. That's why that's important as well. 3 straight games with 25 or more touches. He's just a massive workload in a great matchup against the Bears. He's my running back 3 this week, as you see it there on your screen in the little box, in case you couldn't read. We've highlighted it there just to be really helpful.
We're really trying to help out.
We're really trying to help out. So there you go. Josh Jacobs makes the love list significantly high. It'll be interesting to see because Davante Adams keeps popping off, and feels like squeaky wheel gets the grease, kind of thing. So I feel like a 10 reception, 220 yard, 2 touchdown game for Davante is coming. But Jacobs is going to get his.
It's a little weird that he hasn't had more than 3.6 yards per carry in any game this season. He hasn't topped that. But the thing is, 1, amazing matchup against Chicago, and then 2, he's had 35 targets this season. So even though he's not been efficient on the ground, supplemented with work through the air, and this is as good a matchup as it gets.
And with either a backup quarterback or a less than 100% Jimmy Garoppolo, they'll want to lean on the run game on the road.
Josh Jacobs comes in as RB3. Kenneth Walker right behind him as RB4. And Kenneth Walker and that Seattle offense have Arizona on deck. I mean, Arizona, same thing with Chicago. It's a fiesta for running backs against them this year.
It is a fiesta. Yeah,
I brought it back.
We had a one-day interlude without any Spanish or French, but good to see that we're back on the international bandwagon.
Sure.
The key
bonjour.
thing, bonjour, à toi aussi. I think the key thing here is that the Seahawks are 7.5-point favorites, and so not only is it a favorable matchup, they're going to be in position where they can run the ball. Sneaky thing that's gone under the radar is Seattle's defense has been really good lately. They completely decimated the Giants. They really shut down the Bengals as well. So I think that they're going to be playing with the lead, and Pete Carroll loves to run the ball playing with the lead. So there'll be a lot of volume for Kenneth Walker and a lot of opportunities to hit the home run, which he's quite good at.
Look, it's a great matchup, as you mentioned, right? Arizona allows the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're actually bottom 5 in the NFL in terms of most rushing yards and rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs. And the Ken Walker versus Zach Charbonnet running back by committee concerns that were in the preseason aren't there anymore, right? Kenneth Walker is getting the majority of the work for the Seattle Seahawks. He's getting a ton of work, and the reason that's important, because every starting running back to face the Cardinals this year has seen 20 or more touches, and they're averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. So Ken Walker, who's been flirting, he's in that area, 17, 18, 19 touches a game, should get at least 20 touches in a favorable game script at home. Should have a big game against the Cards.
How about DeAndre Swift? He's got the Dolphins here in a matchup where we're going to see a lot of offense. Obviously
on
not
NBC.
On NBC.
And Peacock. Sunday night.
That's
games
right.
in Philadelphia, where that morning we will be on Fantasy Football pregame live from an actual Applebee's on Roosevelt Boulevard.
And then they will transport you to be on Sunday Night Football.
Yes, they will.
Really
I wonder if it's just gonna be like a normal car, or if it's just gonna be like I wonder if it's like a big giant apple. Like the Mets have the bullpen car with a big apple, right?
Well, they also have the actual. You're saying the apple that rises up.
Right, that rises up at a Shea Stadium.
Yeah.
But I thought they also didn't have a car, or is it?
I don't believe they have a car.
I was
a little
say,
cart.
maybe
it was a Mr. Met. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
just run with it.
The fact of the matter is that would be very cool if Applebee's had like a big Apple car.
Apple car.
Yeah, that they could drive me
for Batman, but for Matthew Berry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
She got the Berry Mobile going.
I shouldn't go.
That's something I
gotta call my agents. I gotta get on this.
Agents?
Agents. I have agents.
Oh,
I have a team.
Wow.
A team.
It takes a whole. You have no idea.
Yeah, I kind of do.
Because it's like
it's very believable.
Well, like none of them want to deal with me full time.
Yes.
So
it's a committee.
It's a committee.
True three-headed monster backfield.
Like the Philadelphia backfield.
Yes,
exactly.
like DeAndre Swift deals.
Exactly. Oh, we should get back to DeAndre Swift. That's a good point.
100%.
You are correct. So. Unlike my representation, DeAndre Swift can really do it all by himself. He's had 5 straight games with 17 or more touches in this Eagles backfield. Since week 2, he's averaging 18.9 fantasy points per game. You mentioned the target share with Josh Jacobs, Jay. That's also with DeAndre Swift. He's had an 18% target share over the last 3 weeks. They've started to involve him in the passing game as well. And that's important because the Dolphins allow the 2nd most yards per reception to running backs this season. So Swift, who's touching the ball a ton in a high-scoring matchup. He's a top 8 play for me this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing him Sunday night on NBC and Peacock right here. I'm a company man.
Yep. Connor, you watched that game quite closely against the Jets where DeAndre Swift only had 10 carries for 18 yards on the ground.
Shocking.
Did you think that was more about the Jets' defense or more about the Eagles' offensive line struggling because it is banged up?
I think it was a little bit of the latter because the Jets, they have a great defense, but you can establish the run a little bit against them. And the Eagles said, we're going to drop back and throw, especially when Lane Johnson went down, which totally changes their run game. So I think it was partially looking at Quentin Williams in that front and saying, we're not going to get too crazy with this. We think we could throw on backup corners. No Sauce Gardner, no DJ Reed. That plan didn't work out for them. They'll get back to their roots and go to Swift against Miami.
Yep. Lane Johnson was estimated to not practice yesterday, but it seems like it's not a high ankle sprain. It's a
that's good
low
news.
ankle sprain, or low-ish seems to be the word. So he's a chance to play, but it's not going to be a long-term absence either way.
A couple others receiving votes: Isaiah Pacheco, Jerome Ford. We talked about the Browns a little earlier. Zack Evans, who could finally see some action for the Rams, and Jaleel McLaughlin of the Broncos, Matthew.
Yeah, I want to focus here on, Ford we already talked about with Watson either not playing or banged up. He's averaging 15 touches in the 3 games as a starter. Indy has allowed the 3rd most rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs. Pacheco's averaging 20 touches a game. Chargers allow the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. Jaleel McLaughlin has 3 straight games with 9 or more touches. Packers allow the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So all those great. But Zack Evans, I think, is really interesting because the expectation is he will lead the backfield for the Rams with Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers both not expected to play against a Steelers defense that gives up the 5th most yards per carry to opposing running backs. However, when asked directly on the podium, it's like, hey, basically Sean McVay, I'm paraphrasing here, but when they asked Sean McVay, they're like, hey, Zack Evans, he's your guy, right? And Sean was like, well,
He threw cold water on it.
I mean, he definitely did not, he wasn't like, yeah, I really love Zack Evans. He was, more like, well, whatever. Like, we got Royce, we got Royce, and, it was great to see Hendo back,
He named every running back that's ever played for the team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've been talking with Eric Dickerson,
Yes, 100%. Todd Gurley might be back there somewhere.
Exactly.
We didn't check the Sean McVay show, though.
No,
that's
we
where you
didn't
get the
watch
good
that
nuggets.
show.
Coach McVay mentioned Myles Gaskin as well. Here's what I would say. So I ranked him running back 23 this week, so I think he's a flex. And I do think that because there's 6 teams on a bye and we've got other running backs hurt, if you need to start a running back from the Rams, Zack Evans is your guy. I think he's got the best chance to have the opportunity. I personally think he's the most talented of the guys. He's been there, right? Having said that, I just want to be realistic here. They haven't used him all year. They've seen him in practice, and they haven't made any kind of effort to get him involved. Now, again, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? I mean, so he's the last man standing, so to speak. But you do have a veteran in Royce Freeman. Darrell Henderson does know the offense. I don't know. I just want to be clear here that I like Zack Evans with an asterisk, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Hey, Barry, I need a guy that could potentially get 15 touches. That's Zack Evans. But just understand the risk that there's also a chance he gets 5.
Yep. And look, there is a lot of upside because the Steelers have a bottom 5 rushing defense.
Correct.
They've not been good against the run. And the Rams are favored in this game. We'll be expecting to be able to run the ball. But it's just, The thing with McVay as well is that you can establish baselines for how coaches talk about different things.
Yes.
Pete Carroll, never trust him on injuries.
Correct.
Sean McVay, he was talking up Puka Nacua a ton in the preseason and now asking about different players. We got other guys.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not sure what to expect.
McVay is on the positive scale in terms of being fairly honest and open with the media. He's much more. The other people that you're just I don't believe a word that you say.
Yep.
But McVay is closer to is fairly obvious. Fairly truthful. So again, Zach will be out there. It's a great matchup. He's got a great opportunity, and I think if he starts hot, he'll keep the role. But I don't think it's a guarantee that he gets, Kyren Williams' workload here.
Yep.
Looking over at the running back hate list, it is headlined by Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. Listen, we love Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss on this show, but we do not love any running backs that play the Browns defense, Matthew.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here. It's 6 teams are on a bye. I have Jonathan Taylor just inside my top 20. I have Zach Moss as a flex. I can't imagine you have the luxury of benching either one of these guys given how bad Buymageddon is. I just want to lower expectations here because to your point about the Browns defense, Connor, look, 6th fewest rushing yards allowed per game to running backs. The 2nd highest success rate against run plays this season through 5 games. They've allowed 1 rushing touchdown to an opposing running back. 1. One, and you think about what happened last year with Zach Moss with his season lows in terms of touches and snap rate. It feels like there's going to be a changing of a guard, right? Last week it was 2 weeks ago, Zach Moss, Jonathan Taylor played 10 snaps. Then last week was a truly even split between Moss and Taylor. And so this week you figure it's probably maybe more closer to 70-30, but maybe it's 60-40. So you have two guys in a committee in a brutal matchup. Again, you probably have to start them because I can't imagine you have a better choice, but lower expectations.
Yep.
Look for your upside elsewhere.
Side note on this one, I think this might be your last chance to get Myles Garrett at plus 350 to win Defensive Player of the Year on DraftKings. He should be the favorite for this award, in my opinion. It was a weird thing where Micah Parsons, after that one sack against the Chargers, he went from plus 300 to plus 150. And I get it, it was a big moment. No one's going to remember that moment in 3 months come the end of the season.
Right.
Watt, Parsons, Garrett, all very close. To me, the tiebreak goes to who's on the best defense. Cleveland have the best defense in the NFL right now, and Garrett's going to have very strong sack numbers.
People are going to want to reward the Browns defense for their performance this year, and that's sort of a way to acknowledge the dominance of Cleveland's defense.
Yep. Our next one here, Najee Harris. He's got the Rams. He comes in as RB29 for Matthew here, Jay. And when you look at Najee, I mean, he just hasn't been involved in the pass game for the Steelers this year. That's the biggest concern right now.
Yeah, my man Najee Harris, who
Stockholder.
I've attached my once good name to, for better or worse. Look, I think that this offense is just a complete stay away outside of the receivers. They just haven't been able to do anything. There's uncertainty about the split each week between Warren and Najee Harris, and you need the passing work when the offensive line is this bad and they can't get anything going on the ground. They're dogs in this game. I don't think they're going to be running the ball a ton. So I agree, Najee Harris probably not a massive voice.
Out of the 56 qualified running backs in fantasy points per touch this season, Najee Harris is 53rd.
Okay, that's
that's not great. He's outside my top 25.
Better than a couple,
I have him lower than Jalen Warren, and it's not a good matchup against the Rams, who allow the sixth fewest fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. By the way, if you do show up to the Applebee's dressed as Jay Croucher, we will also accept a Michael Thomas jersey or a Najee Harris jersey.
My two guys.
Yeah,
my boys.
That's fair. That's a fair. Fair costume.
100%.
Our last one here, Alexander
or
Madison.
Or as Crocodile Dundee. If you dress as Crocodile Dundee.
Those are the
Kangaroo
three.
Jack didn't make the cut.
Or Kangaroo Jack.
Yeah,
exactly.
Kangaroo
Or
Jack.
Colin Hay from Men at Work.
Yeah, no one's going to know that one.
Oh, boy. Yeah. All right, one more running back, so we'll get through this together. Alexander Madison comes in as a top 20 running back during Bimageddon for you, Matthew, but he's got the Niners, who we talk about in a similar light as the Browns in terms of the run defense impact.
Yeah, I mean, they're fantastic. The fifth fewest rushing yards per game to running backs. Only 2 running backs have scored 12 or more fantasy points against San Francisco this entire year. And in the last 2 weeks, Alexander Madison has 70 rush yards on 26 carries. Like he's averaging 2.7 yards per carry. He hasn't been good, but volume has gotten there. I don't know that he's going to be able to get that kind of volume against the Niners on Monday night. And I just, again, love-hate is all about expectations. And so because there's 6 teams on a bye, as you mentioned, he's my running back 18 this week, but that's only because of the lack of other options out there. Lower expectations for Madison this week.
I mean, he's 18 for 44 against the Bears. I just don't think it's going to happen for Madison this season.
Yeah.
That's his stat line. Like when you think Alexander Madison, you think
18 for 44.
You think 1844, maybe 1432.
No touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
Fumble.
A catch for 4 yards.
Yeah,
that's how it's been.
One crucial drop on third down.
Oh
Been
man,
a tough year for Madison.
Been a tough year.
We are eating good in the neighborhood this Sunday with the fantasy football pregame
look
show.
as somebody standing over Kirk Cousins having sacked him, and a coach like pointing at him like that was your blitz to pick up.
Oh man, for the fantasy football pregame show broadcast live from Applebee's in Philadelphia. The restaurant at 1942 Roosevelt Boulevard opens at 10:30 a.m. and pregame kicks off at 11. Come on out early in your costumes to start your tailgate party with us this Sunday and ask your sit-start questions ahead of the big Sunday night football matchup between the Dolphins and Eagles. And if you're not in Philly, you can still watch the show live on Peacock and on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. We're going to break. When we're back, Love-Hate continues with pass catchers and quarterbacks.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.